Ballot item number 11, private member's notice of motion number 29. Mr. Miller, Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that, in the opinion of this House, the Ontario government should make Ontario a leader in compostable packaging to help address our waste problem by A, encouraging innovations in waste-free packaging by offering tax incentives to companies that develop and use new certified compostable packaging, and B, offering incentives to municipalities to create or enhance organics collection programs and streamlining the approvals process for municipal compost facilities.
Mr. Miller, Parry Sound, Muskoka has moved private member's notice of motion number 29 pursuant to Standing Order 98. The member has 12 minutes for his presentation.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Ontario has a waste problem. That is how the Environmental Commissioner began her report issued last October entitled Beyond the Blue Box, Ontario's Fresh Start on Waste Diversion and the Circular Economy. I agree. Ontario does have a waste problem, and I'm proud to have introduced a number of bills over the years intended to help address our waste problem. I was pleasantly surprised when the government adopted the ideas of the LCBO deposit return bill that I introduced in 2004. And I was again pleasantly surprised when the government adopted a version of my product stewardship bill as the Waste-Free Ontario Act. Unfortunately, the Waste-Free Ontario Act is not living up to its promise and is not addressing our waste problem quickly enough. Today, I want to focus on compostable packaging and diverting more organic waste from landfill. I believe one of the ways to address our waste problem is to increase the use of compostable packaging and provide greater access to organics collection. As the Speaker will remember, last fall my private member's bill to require all single-use coffee pods sold in Ontario to be compostable within 4 years passed second reading with unanimous support. I want to take this opportunity to welcome representatives from the two companies that inspired the bill who are here to see today's debate. From Muskoka Roastery in Huntsville, in the members' West Gallery, we have Jordan McKenzie, Marketing Manager, and Adam Frimmer, Sales and Customer Development Manager, and as well as Chris McCullough, VP of Communications and Government Relations, who is here from Club Coffee of Etobicoke. Please welcome them. I also want to introduce Susan Antler of the Compost Council of Canada and thank her for being here to support this motion as well. Thank you, Susan. Well, that bill, the Reducing Waste One Pot at a Time Act, died on the order paper when the Premier prorogued the legislature. It sparked a great conversation about the amount of waste we produce and how we can reduce that waste. I'm proud to say that the discussion reached across the country. It got press coverage across the country, and this spring in British Columbia, MOA introduced a similar bill. I'm pleased to report that the City of Toronto is now doing a test of how well the compostable coffee pod created by Club Coffee will break down in Toronto's system. And just last week, I visited the District of Muskoka compost system, and I want to thank Andrew Guthrie, Manager of Solid Waste, for taking the time to show me around. He told me about the tests they did on the Pure Pod 100 and how it successfully composted at the District of Muskoka facility. I would say that he explained that they had to kind of baby it in their system. They had to put a number of them in a mesh bag and sort of move them around manually so that they'd be able to find them again. But in reality, if it was just in the system where there's mechanical movement of the compost, it would break down even faster, he commented. But today I want to talk about more than coffee pods. Lots of packaging could be made from compostable bioplastics and other compostable materials, and I would love to see Ontario on the leading edge of compostable packaging. To that end, I bring this motion. It addresses two ways to encourage compostable packaging. First, encourage the research and development with tax incentives targeted at this sector, and second, encourage increased access to organics collection and improve municipal composting systems so they can accept certified compostable packaging. Compostable packaging represents not only a way to address waste, but a business opportunity. Just today, I heard on the radio talk about England putting in a deposit return system on plastic containers and talking about banning plastic straws in the Commonwealth. Plastics have been identified as a pollutant around the world. Recycling is definitely helping, but bioplastics that break down into usable compost are becoming another part of the solution. Ontario has an opportunity to become a leader in developing and producing compostable packaging. Developing and manufacturing of the Pure Pod 100, for example, has created jobs across Ontario, including in Guelph, where the bioresins was developed, in Chatham, Kent, Essex, where the bioresin is produced, in Oakville, where the ring is produced, in Huron-Bruce, where the polylactic acid used in the lid is produced, in Newmarket, Aurora, where the lid is produced, in Ottawa Centre, where the inks are produced, across Ontario, where corn and other crops involved are grown, in Etobicoke North, where Club Coffee manufactures the final product, and of course in Parry Sound, Muskoka, where the compostable coffee pod is used by Muskoka Roastery. So let's talk about incentives. I suggest the government target a portion of the Ontario Innovation Tax Credit and the Ontario Research and Development Tax Credit to research into waste reduction technologies like compostable packaging. This could lead to the next great Ontario invention, maybe a compostable drinking straw. Imagine the possibilities. Something I believe is already being worked on is compostable sticker for fruit. This is important because non-compostable stickers are creating a problem in compost facilities. I would also like to see a tax credit or other incentives for companies that adopt waste reductions technologies, just like the incentives for companies that put in place energy conservation measures. For example, if a food processing company has to invest in new equipment to transition from traditional plastic packaging to certified compostable packaging, they should be able to apply for a tax credit for making that investment in our environment. Now let me talk about the second part of the motion, increasing access to organics collection. Right now, one of the biggest obstacles to compostable packaging is access to compost and compost capacity. The National Zero Waste Council recently issued a report entitled Packaging and the Circular Economy, a case study on compostables in Canada. This report identified this issue saying, quote, "The ability to process compostable packaging is currently outpaced by both the volume of food waste and the expanding diversity of compostable packaging," close quote. About the only negative feedback I got on my compostable coffee pod bill from the public was from people asking what good it was to have compostable coffee pods if they don't have organics collection. On the other side of the same coin, there were concerns from municipalities. Before I debated Bill 173, my staff spoke to the Ontario Municipal Association, and their biggest concern was that municipalities wouldn't have the facilities to handle compostable packaging. As I said during that debate, municipalities will need help to ensure their facilities are able to process compostable packaging. That is why this motion suggests incentives for municipalities to increase organics collection or improve their composting technologies. Now let me speak about the environmental benefits of greater composting. Composting can not only keep waste out of our landfill and produce valuable compost, it can also reduce greenhouse gases. When organic waste decomposes in wet, oxygen-deprived environment of a landfill, it produces methane and nitrous oxide, greenhouse gases. When the same waste decomposes in a compost where it has oxygen and controlled moisture levels, it produces carbon dioxide, which does not contribute to greenhouse gases. Even organic matter in an open-air backyard compost pile doesn't produce harmful greenhouse gases. Again, I'm going to quote the Environmental Commissioner's report. Diane Sachs says, quote, "Decomposing waste in landfills also produces gases that cause fires, damage vegetation, and create unpleasant odours. Some of these gases are powerful greenhouse gases that drive climate change. In 2015, 5.2% of Ontario's total greenhouse gas emissions, 8.6 megatons, were reported to come from waste," close quote. If that isn't a good enough reason, consider this. The Environmental Commissioner believes that number is wrong and that the decomposing waste contributes 15% of Ontario's greenhouse gas emissions. If the Environmental Commissioner is correct, and I trust she is, then anything we can do to keep organics out of landfill will make a significant difference in greenhouse gas emissions. I do recognize that large landfill operators are working to capture and use the gases, but smaller landfills and the U.S. landfills where much of our waste goes aren't necessarily doing that. Let me talk about the community benefits of greater composting. Ontario right now has about 11 years' worth of landfill capacity, according to the Ontario Waste Management Association. According to the government's own research, the amount of waste produced by Ontarians is expected to increase by 40% by 2050, requiring the creation of 16 new or expanded landfills. But landfills aren't something that most people want nearby. The member for Oxford is working hard to help the community of Ingersoll fight a proposed landfill. Right now, organics make up about 30% of Ontario's waste. If we can reduce the amount of waste going into landfills, we will extend the lives of our existing landfills and reduce the need for unwanted new landfill sites. Now let me talk about another aspect of the motion, streamlining approvals for compost facilities. One thing the government could do to increase organic waste diversion without costing a lot of money is streamline the process municipalities go through to get compost facilities approved. Unfortunately, like many government processes, the process for having a compost facility approved is tied up in red tape. The Environmental Commissioner calls the current process, quote, slow, expensive, and unpredictable, and makes the following recommendation. Given the importance of organics diversion, ECO recommends that the MOECC make the process for approving anaerobic digestion and composting facilities fast and predictable, close quote. I ask the Minister to commit today to review this process and find ways to reduce the red tape to not only help municipalities save money, but to help them help the environment. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, according to our Environmental Commissioner, 25% of everything we throw out as a society is packaging. We have heard of people who have started to protest unnecessary packaging by removing it in the store and leaving it behind. They make their point, but that packaging still must be disposed of. We need to find ways to reduce the amount of packaging that goes into landfill. Recycling is helping, but recycling alone won't solve the problem. I believe compostable packaging can play an important role if we invest in the research and in our municipal compost facilities. In closing, I want to thank Muskoka Roastery Coffee in Huntsville for introducing me to compostable coffee pod, which inspired Bill 173 and this motion. And I want to recognize Club Coffee in Etobicoke for doing the research to create a certified compostable coffee pod. And I see I'm out of time, Madam Speaker, so I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Further debate? The member from Windsor-Tecumseh.
Well, thank you, Speaker, and indeed